Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Rachel. I'm the owner of Helen, Olivia Flowers. And today I'm going to be teaching one of our favorite workshops in the summer season, the Limoncello workshop, which is a beautiful mix of fresh flowers and fruit. We'll be using lemons today. So if you're following along from home, a couple of things that you'll need to do to get set up for class. I recommend filling your vase with a room temperature water. I've got mine pre-filled to about an inch from the top of the vase. And then you'll want to get in front of you your chicken wire, more later on what this is and why we use it. And then you'll want to grab some type of tool to cut your flowers with. I'm using today two things, a floral knife, which is what I use for most of the design. And then I also have a pair of floral clippers. The clippers that I love, if you're looking for a good pair, are from ARS. They're sold on Amazon, and it's called an ARS bypass pruner. And they come in a bunch of different colors. Most commonly on Amazon, you'll see the tan or the white ones. But these are great clippers. They're Japanese, and they never dull. They're awesome to use. But if you don't have clippers or a knife, you can just use some type of sharp shear or scissor to get you through class. And then you'll want to have out in front of you your ingredient list. So this will tell you the name of every variety of flower and greenery that we're using in workshop to create our design. You'll also have a beautiful bucket, full bucket of flowers. And you can see that there's a theme today, and the theme is yellow and lemons and summer, so it's going to be really beautiful. So without further ado, let's get started. The first thing after you get your vase filled with room temperature water is we're going to add our chicken wire. The room temperature water is significant because flowers generally do not like extremes. So extremely cold can be shocking to our flowers. During the springtime when we're dealing with bulb flowers, they do like a colder water, but for the most part, regular flowers, room temperature is always safe. And really hot water on the opposite extreme will cause your flowers to open more quickly, which might be a desired effect if you're wanting to have really blown open flowers for a dinner party, let's say. But for a regular arrangement that you're wanting to enjoy in your home for as long as possible, room temperature is great. And then the chicken wire is just the mechanic that we're going to use to hold and lock everything in place. So if you've tried designing before and you're struggling with getting a shape that kind of behaves, it's probably because you don't have a good mechanic inside your vase. Chicken wire is super easy to use. It's a little bit more environmentally friendly than a floral foam, let's say, and it's insulated so it doesn't rust. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our sheet. It's about the size of a sheet of printer paper, and we're going to first roll it into a burrito. So kind of forms a Chipotle burrito like that. And I'm holding it up so you can see against the contrast of the white wall. It's harder to see it when it's in front of me. So we're going to make a burrito, and then we're just going to curl in the ends so it forms kind of like a messy sphere. This does not have to look pretty. It will be fully covered by flowers. So as long as it is just loosely a sphere, that's great, and it'll pop right into your vase. You want to create the biggest sphere that will fit inside your vase because you want to have nice big openings in your chicken wire to slide stems in. If you crunch it too small, you'll have trouble getting any stems in. So just a big messy sphere of chicken wire and plop it in your vase. And you're off to the races. So with our arrangement, there's kind of an order that we like to design in for our signature house style. And that order usually begins with a base of hydrangea. Today we're using a baby green hydrangea, and we should have 4 stems in our bucket, so we're going to go ahead and pull those out. Now all of our workshops, we put stems in the buckets that are in wholesale condition. What that means is they have not been conditioned, they have not been perfected, they do not have leaves off, they don't have guard petals off. So that's part of the fun of class, is getting all of these stems ready for the vase. And the first thing we're going to do with everything we handle today is yank off any leaves that are low-lying enough that they might get into the water. The significance here is if you're arranging at home and you get leaves into your water, they will eventually, after a day or two, start to turn to sludge. You'll get an ecosystem inside your vase, your flowers will get really unhappy with the bacteria. So it's important to yank off any type of low-lying leaf that is lower on the stem. Hydrangea is the one flower that I sometimes break this rule a tiny bit, so I'll allow the hydrangea to keep the leaves that just cup the bloom, but everything else lower on the stem is coming off. So usually that means pulling off 2, 3, or 4 leaves per stem. And that also just helps the flower to live. You don't want the stem to be worrying about delivering water and nutrients to all of these accessory leaves. You want it to really be focused on getting that to the bloom. So once we've got these stems cleaned up, they're ready to go into the vase. And I always get the question in live workshops, how do I know how long to cut these stems? So you'll start to get into a rhythm once you get going, but our hydrangea, we're going to want the stem to crisscross the vase, so it'll sit diagonal, and you want the stem to hit low down in the vase towards where your water reserves are. So if we've got a 5-inch vase, I would recommend that we cut our stem length to about 5.5 inches. And I'm gonna make my cut with my knife, but whatever you're using at home, you just wanna make sure that you get a nice angled cut. So I'll actually come, since it's the first cut, up to the camera so you can see a little bit better. So we've got a nice angled cut, and we're opening up a lot of surface area there. So that is how the flower drinks its water. So the bigger the cut and the deeper the angle, the better the flower can drink, the longer it lives. So once we make our cut, we're going to quickly try to get it into our vase, and we're gonna angle it across the vase. So I'm gonna do that with all of my hydrangea. Just going to crisscross the vase. And I'm gonna keep my hydrangea sitting right on the rim of the vase. So I'm on a lazy Susan, so I can kind of spin. You'll notice that the hydrangea stems oftentimes have a lean or a curve to them, so they're not perfectly straight. So you just want to identify where the pretty part of the hydrangea is, like that is much prettier than that back end right there. So I want to make sure that the face of the flower, the pretty part of the flower, is what is pointing out. And as we do this, there's a huge difference between a 5-inch stem length and, let's say, a 6 or 7-inch stem length. So if you're putting your hydrangea in and you're looking at your arrangement compared to mine and you're thinking, wow, mine's a lot bigger, you probably want to cut 1 inch or so off your stems to bring your hydrangea nice and trim into the side of the vase. The reason is we've got a set formula for this class, and we want our flowers to fill this vase appropriately. So if you make your arrangement really wide, you're just not going to have enough product to get a lush and beautiful look. So I would keep them pretty trim into the side of the vase. Our hydrangea is definitely not the sexiest flower that we're going to be working with today, so you'll notice that we'll allow all of our other flowers to kind of nestle on top of the hydrangea and hang out a little bit more. But this is how we're giving ourselves a great foundation or base to put the other flowers into. And we're also starting to cover some of our mechanics. So as we add our preliminary ingredients, you'll notice that the chicken wire totally disappears and you are no longer able to see it, which is the goal. So I'll give it a quick spin while you add your hydrangea. All right, so now that we've got our base hydrangea in, we're going to reach for a couple of different types of greenery. And the first type of greenery that we're going to work with is a beautiful variegated ligustrum. Ligustrum is part of the privet family, and you can get it either in a solid green color or you can get it in this beautiful variegated color. Variegated is just a long, fancy term for its 2 different colors. So this one is a green and white variegation. Our greenery oftentimes comes in really big, long chunks, and so in order to get this big, long, 24-inch piece of greenery to work for our low, lush arrangement, we're going to cut it into a few smaller pieces. So take a look at your greenery and figure out where you can best make cuts. You still want your stem to be long enough to get into the vase so it's drinking. So focus on getting a 5 or 6-inch stem length. And you're going to need to also peel away some of the leaves so that they don't get into the water. So I'll come up here again. I've cut my ligustrum into a smaller, more usable piece, and I'm going to take it and just start trimming away any of the leaves that might fall into the water. So I'm winding up with like a little naked tree trunk and then just a little burst of leaves at the top. So I'm gonna start popping in my greenery in and around my hydrangea. And you can play around if you're more of like an organic, natural lover. You can definitely be a little bit more liberal with your greens or let them hang out a little bit more. And if you like something that's a little bit more trim and tidy, you can cut them to a shorter length and just have them barely peek through the greens. So we're going to keep cutting apart our ligustrum. I'm not going to use all of mine. I have too much for this vase. So I'll just set the other half to the side. Maybe I'll come back to it at the end if I want to tuck a little bit more greenery in. All right. So just doing a little spin. Okay. So now I've got kind of the shape of my arrangement traced in with my ligustrum. I'm going to move on to umbrella fern next. Umbrella fern is one of my favorite ingredients for summer. This is umbrella fern, and you can see really clearly how it got its name because it looks like a little umbrella. It's really wispy, light, beautiful, and just feels summery. So a couple of things, housekeeping things for umbrella fern. Umbrella fern sometimes gets these like fried brown bits on the umbrella fern, so if you have any little yuckies, you can just pick them right out. Sometimes it's like in the middle of your fern, sometimes it's a tip that needs to be plucked away, but umbrella fern's really forgiving. You can just yank off anything that doesn't look great. And we're going to be careful with how we add our umbrella fern. I always say umbrella fern, when used well, is gorgeous in an arrangement, and when it's not used properly, it is just weird looking. So there's definitely a technique for how to use this, and these are quite large. So I'm going to cut my stem pretty short. I'm going to cut my stem to about 2 or 3 inches. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to really bury my umbrella fern in. So some of the fronds are going to just tuck right into the center. So about a 2 or 3 inch cut. And I'm just going to bury that stem almost straight into the center. And then I'm going to use my hands to maneuver the pieces of the umbrella fern in and around the hydrangea. And I'm going to do that with both of my umbrella fern. So I'm just going to get them really well tucked in there. So again, stems super short, like 2 or 3 inches, and then push, push, push all the way down in the center. And you'll see if you cut the stems short enough, it really is not too crazy in the vase. If you feel like you've got too much fern, you can just cut away a piece or two. Like I've got one little piece here that I don't like the way that's sitting, and I don't like the way this is sitting, so I'm just trimming away anything that bugs me. And trimming is something that I do throughout my design process. So as I add more flowers, I'm going to be bothered by different things. So you'll notice me pick up clippers and just make edits as I go. So once I get roses in, I may be bugged by the way this fern is sitting. So I may either cut it or maneuver it into a different position. So it's a fluid process as you design. All right, so we've got our fern in, we've got our ligustrum. I may add like another piece or two of ligustrum on top of the fern. Just pop 1 or 2 more in. All right, so I feel good about the base of my arrangement now, and I'm ready to start adding some flowers. So now that greenery's in, I want to get some of my larger blooms in place, and for me that means turtle roses. We've got beautiful turtle roses in our bucket, and we also have one David Austin garden rose that looks like a turtle rose, but it's a little bit softer in color. So when you find the David Austin, this is the David Austin, it's more of a peachy soft yellow, just set that to the side. We're going to position him last. But we've got all of our turtles out, and we're ready to start conditioning our roses. So rose conditioning is a little bit of a process, and I'll talk to you about the steps from beginning to end. So roses come from farms in big cardboard packs. They're usually sold 25 stems to a pack for a standard rose. And some roses will have thorns, some will not. It looks like this bunch has light thorns, so just be careful as you handle them. This variety again is called Turtle. It is, I think, the prettiest standard yellow rose available, and I'll come up so you can see it if you're watching from home. So this is what a turtle looks like. It has a really high petal count, and I love how the petals kind of swirl in the center. It looks like a garden rose, but without paying garden rose pricing. So I'm going to, you probably can guess it, I'm going to take off all of the low-lying leaves. You never want to goof around with these little green pieces that sit right underneath the rose head. They're called sepals, and if you yank them off, they will weaken the rose. So we're going to leave those on and intact. Anytime you handle roses, just a little tip, roses are incredibly bruise prone. So if you handle the face of the flower, you will see bruising, and sometimes it will take a day or two for it to really mature and show up. So you can handle it a lot and then come back hours later and you'll start to see the signs of overhandling. So when we handle our roses, we only want to touch the outermost petals. And we're just going to take off anything that is not beautiful. So usually there's on each rose just a handful of guard petals that need to come off in order to expose a pristine rose underneath. Every single stem is going to be totally different. So some roses you will only have to take off one guard petal, whereas other roses you may really have to take off, 5 or 6 petals to get them in pristine condition. So we're going to go through that process and clean all of these roses. And this gives you a little bit of a glimpse on a very small scale into the life of a wedding florist or an event florist. So imagine doing a wedding where you have to condition and clean hundreds and thousands of stems of roses. And then it's quite easy to see why wedding flowers cost so much, because there is a need for every stem to be perfect and beautiful. If you're a little bit slower at this process, the beauty of watching me on YouTube is you can just pause me, get caught up with your rose conditioning, and then press play again. So I'm just gonna whip through this really quickly. You'll notice again, I'm not ever touching the face of the flower, I am just handling the sides. And you'll also notice that I throw all of my trash on the floor, which is what florists do in a flower shop. So at home, you're probably being a little bit tidier than I am, so it might take you a bit longer, but here in the studio, we throw everything on the floor as we design, and at the end of the day, we find that we are sometimes standing on a foot of debris, but that's just how we operate. So we're going to take our beautiful turtle roses when they're conditioned, and we're going to start cutting them down to size and popping them into our arrangement. I'm going to keep these a little bit longer than my hydrangea because I want to sit them barely on top of the hydrangea. So if we cut our hydrangea stems to 5.5 inches, I'm going to cut my rose stems to maybe 6 inches. And the advice that I would give you as you place your flowers is to think of your arrangement kind of like an upside down bowl or dome. So you want to angle your stems kind of in graduated angles. So not everything should go perfectly straight up and down in an arrangement because you'll wind up with a really awkward looking design at the end. So you want to make sure that you're putting some stems in kind of at a 45-degree angle and gradually arching them all the way up. So I'm going to start popping these guys in. And as you handle your roses and all of your flowers, you want to make sure that you are pushing them into the design from the stem rather than from the head of the rose. And that will really help to make sure that you aren't breaking your stems. So just be gentle as you go, and as much as you can, hold from the stem as you push into the vase. The chicken wire, especially as our vase fills in, is really going to start to do its job. So it's going to hold the flowers in place. And there is going to come a point of time where it gets really hard to put stems in the chicken wire and you'll get resistance as you go. So just be patient. If it's really not able to slip into place, pull your stem out and try again, a centimeter to the left or a centimeter to the right, and that should work just fine. Okay. So I'm just working my way around the vase, trying to kind of evenly space my yellow roses. I feel a sneeze coming on. Excuse me. Okay, just one sneeze. All right, so I am going to do a little spin move so you can see. I'm keeping my highest point on the top of my arrangement and kind of sloping down on all the sides. And that's what I'm working with at the moment. And the next ingredient that I will pop in will be our yellow spray roses. We have beautiful yellow spray roses that we're working with today. This is my favorite yellow spray rose variety because I just like the shape of these spray roses. When you work with flowers it's been a decade of working with flowers for me, you get really attached to certain varieties. This variety is called Yellow Babe. It's a pretty inexpensive variety of yellow spray rose, but I think it is so gorgeous. I actually seek these out versus the more expensive alternatives. And if you look up close, you can see they just have a really high petal count, and it's kind of a shallow cupped size of spray rose. So it sits really beautifully in a low lush design, and the color is great. So that's why I love Yellow Babe. And they're always healthy. So you'll notice certain varieties when you buy them, there's a lot of rot or bruising or damage, and these spray roses are just perfect every time. So I love them. So we're gonna go ahead and work these into our arrangements. And there's a little of prep that needs to happen to get them going. So we're going to, again, yank off all the leaves. Quick thing to note that I haven't noted before, as we pull leaves off, you'll notice that the leaves are still in excellent health. So they look green, they're not crunchy, it's not like a Dorito chip when you handle it. And that's how you can tell that this flower is fresh and came direct from farm. Anytime you're hunting for flowers at the market, at the grocery store, or wherever, obviously you want to make sure that the bloom looks beautiful, but you also want to check to make sure that the leaves are healthy. Sometimes you'll pick up a bunch of flowers that looks to be good, but the leaves are really icky looking, so they're discolored or they're crunchy, and that just means that it's sat in cold storage for a long time before arriving to its end destination, and usually means that you won't get as much life out of those flowers. So always check out your leaves is a good indicator. We're going to take our spray roses and pop them into our design. And you may wind up with a spray rose stem like mine that has a really long lateral off to the side. So if you look, this lateral is 5 inches on its own. If you get lucky and you have a long lateral, you can just snip it and separate it so you wind up with an extra stem to place. And that's nice if you have like a tiny little hole in your arrangement to have just one bloom that you can pop in. But otherwise, we'll keep all of our blooms together, and we're just going to work our spray roses in all around our design. And I'm going to place maybe 1 or 2 of them towards the top of my arrangement and the rest of them towards the sides. So if you get lucky and you can separate a little lateral off of your spray rose stem, definitely do that. And we'll just clean up all of these. Looks like it's my lucky day because I have a lot of long pieces that I can snip off. All right. So I'll just spin that around. So all of our roses and spray roses, and actually hydrangea as well that we've used so far, have been coming out of South America. So in our studio, we buy product from a few different sources. Most of our roses and hydrangea are coming in from South America. Some of the really exotic types of hydrangea that you see, like the bicolor blue and purple, that will come out of Holland, and it is a lot more expensive. But most of your standard hydrangea, like the white, blue, and green, come straight out of South America, as do roses. And a lot of your fill flowers that you see in your bucket are going to be coming in from Holland, from Canada, and then we buy locally depending on the season. So we've got some local hydrangea foliage in our buckets. So it's incredible when you design to stop and think about how many different countries of origin all of these flowers came from, especially considering how perishable they are. So it's a fast-moving industry, cut in Holland on Sunday and into our studio by Wednesday. So pretty fast turnaround. All right, so I'm gonna just cut out my last spray rose and get that nestled into the vase. And again, if you're taking a little bit more time to pick your placements, just pause me and you can restart when you are ready to move on. Okay. So when I design, I always think about the design in a couple of different stages. So stage 1 was us getting our base in. It was our mini green hydrangea and it was our foliage. Stage 2 is getting in all of our big focal flowers. So our spray roses and our roses have gone in. And at this point, we have almost a complete design. It looks full. It would be not the most exciting design if we left it as is, but it's pretty. But here at Helen Olivia, you guys know we like to add lots of fun finishing accents. So that's what we're left with at this point, are some pretty accent flowers. So the next thing I'm gonna grab for, we have a really generous, honestly too much amount of solidago. This is yellow solidago. It's an aster flower in spray form. I'm not going to be able to use all of mine because I have just a ridiculous amount. So if you have a ridiculous amount like I do, enjoy sticking that in a bud vase or something to complement. I'm just going to grab a little bit and I'm going to use this to kind of fill in around my arrangement. Solidago is a flower that we do not use in studio for our standard retail designs until we get into the late summer and start doing like our sunflower arrangements. And people are wanting like more texture towards the end of the season. For regular retail, we don't use a ton of it, but I do really love it for these like Tuscan lemony looking designs. I think it is so beautiful and it's a little bit lighter and airier. So I've cut my solidago laterals into some smaller pieces and I'm just gonna strip away all of the low-lying foliage. So I'll come up and show you what this looks like a little bit closer. So this is a solidago, smaller solidago piece, and I'm just gonna keep the tippy top. That's what's going to poke out of the design, and I'm gonna leave a naked stem on the bottom. So I'm gonna do that several times. When I design, I like to get all of the repetitive work done up front. So I'll oftentimes like clean a big pile of stems and get them ready, and then I'll be able to boom, 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 get them in the vase. Anytime I do that though, I do want to make sure that I'm recutting my stems, reopening them before they go into the water. So I'm going to cut these stems to like that sweet 5 or 6 inch spot, and I'm just going to poke them in around my design. And this is giving us a really pretty fun wispy texture. It feels super summery. I don't know about you guys, I know it's not technically summer yet, but I am ready for it. I'm ready for the sun, I'm ready for the pool, I go to the beach on Sunday for a week. We are all just ready. And in our studio, summer also means a slowdown. So we are in our last really busy week here at the shop. And I think we're all so happy and proud of how the season went, but we are exhausted. So it'll be good for everybody to get a little bit of a rest before we start tackling our summer projects. All right, so I've got solidago spaced all over my arrangement. If you're looking at your arrangement and you're like, you know, I just am not loving the solidago, it probably means that you need to tuck it in a little bit more. This is not an ingredient that is meant to be like really hairy and wild, unless that's the look that you love. So I keep mine where only like, you know, 1.5 inches or 2 inches is peeking out. So just little wisps of solidago and nothing crazy. All right, so now that we've got that placed, we're gonna reach for our last couple of focal blooms, or accent blooms, I should say. I'm gonna now put in my beautiful David Austin garden rose. If you don't see one in your bucket, it's probably because you've mistaken it for a turtle, because they do look a little bit similar. And I'll come up front so you can see this up close. This is called a Beatrice garden rose, and this one is still quite closed, so you'll have plenty of time to enjoy it. If you give your garden rose a smell, they are very fragrant, which is nice. Most roses are no longer fragrant because the fragrance oil tends to age them a little bit more quickly. So garden roses are, you know, the exception to that rule and still quite fragrant. We do have guard petals that need to come off, so we're just gonna yank these. You'll notice when you handle this rose, it is a much softer rose variety. Like the petals have a lot more movement to them. It's a higher petal count in general than your turtle roses. So we're going to get all the leaves yanked off, get all of our guard petals peeled back, and I'm gonna give this a really primo spot right in the center of my arrangement. And a quick rose hack, if you are wanting to get your roses more open, you can always just blow on them, and the warmth of your breath will open your roses a little bit. It's a trick that only works on roses. You're not going to have any success if you're blowing on your hydrangea, but with roses it does certainly work. And I'm feeling my chicken wire is really doing its job because I'm having a hard time, there we go, placing my rose now that my arrangement is really nice and full. But I got it in. All right, so I am really nice and full at this point. I'm just gonna add my last couple of accents. We have gorgeous yellow ranunculus in our buckets. I love ranunculus, most people do. It's a tiny flower but has about a zillion layers of petal and it's just so beautiful. So I'm gonna cut my ranunculus and I'm gonna keep these stems a little bit on the longer side because I want them to not sink or recess so far down into the design. Instead I want them to like pop out a tiny bit, nothing crazy, but giving them like an extra inch or so to pop out. It's really gonna help. So I'll carefully get those positioned in place. And I love that even though this arrangement is monochromatic or all one color, there's still so much interest to look at. Like there's a lot of different textures and types of flower going on. So I think that makes it feel really special. And our last ingredient that is floral is going to be related to our ranunculus that we just put in. This is called a butterfly ranunculus. And butterfly ranunculus are always tangled, that's just what they do. So I'm going to carefully separate my pieces of butterfly ranunculus. These are super delicate. They have a little bit of a like weathered look to them. That's how they always look. So don't expect butterfly ranunculus to be perfectly cupped. And they are, believe it or not, super long lasting despite having a really delicate appearance. So I'm just going to cut my butterfly ranunculus and I'm going to nest him in. Super fragile stems, so just be careful. It may take you several attempts to get this guy into the chicken wire, which is okay. It's worth it. All right, so I've got one of my little butterfly ranunculus there, and then I'm going to pop in my next stem. I've got buds hanging off of this stem, so you can separate them and use them if you like, or don't if you don't like them. Ranunculus buds sometimes will open with time, not always. And oftentimes if they do open, it's not during the life of the actual arrangement. So, you know, if you were to hold on to the buds for a week or two, they might do something, but I wouldn't expect them to do much of anything while this arrangement is alive. So I'm gonna spin this so you can take a gander at our full arrangement. And we're gonna come back at the end with just a few pretty pieces of hydrangea foliage. Hydrangea foliage comes from our beloved Lindale farm. That's our farmer that we buy the lion's share of our local product from. And she sells us hydrangea foliage as a pretty accent for our arrangements. And we're going to, again, just strip away all of the low-lying leaves and just use the tippy tops. And I always like to have, I call it my Band-Aid green at the end. So I like to have something that I can just use to polish off my design. And you'll notice that by adding a little touch of greenery at the end, we're really going to perfect the look of our arrangement. So any little crevice or hole or void that we need to even out, this is how we're going to do it. And yes, even the professionals need to do this. This is something we do all day, every day. So I've got like a little crater in the center of my arrangement, and I'm just going to pop in a little piece of hydrangea foliage, and voila, it looks lush and full and beautiful now. And I'm going to do that to a couple of the little holes on the sides. And there's something about the bright green color of this hydrangea foliage that just screams summer to me. I love it. We buy this by the bucket during the summer months. So it's a staple in our studio, and if you follow us on social media, you'll be able to pick out now the hydrangea foliage. You'll see it over and over again this time of year. Okay, so I've got my hydrangea foliage nice and nestled in, and I'm really loving how that looks. Okay, so the last ingredient, and the most fun ingredient, in my opinion, is going to be the lemon. So everyone has 2 lemons. You may decide that 2 is too many for your arrangements. I'm probably going to use just 1 lemon, and I'll maybe put another lemon at the base of my design on my kitchen island, and I think that's so chic and pretty. But with one lemon, I'm gonna of course peel off the stickers because we don't want to see that. Shout out Aldi, who was across the street from our studio. We got our lemons from Aldi. So we're gonna take our lemon, I'm just gonna cut it in half with a knife, just like that. And then everyone should have in their tool bag a hyacinth stake. So this is a green wooden stake. It's used sometimes to help support hyacinth stems that are a little bit gelatinous when the season is on, but we use hyacinth stakes year round. These are super handy. You can use them to stake and wire succulents. You can use them for Christmas ornaments if you're trying to get them in planters. There's a million applications for hyacinth stakes, so a staple in our studio. I'm just gonna cut my hyacinth stake in 2 pieces because I don't need a whole long stick. And I'm going to carefully poke it into the back of the lemon. I want to make sure to go slowly so I don't jam my stake the whole way through the lemon. But now I've given my lemon a stem, and I need to trim a little bit more length off. So I'm just going to pop this in to my arrangement. Let's see, I'm going to find a nice open spot. So I've got one sitting right up top, and then I'm going to put another one in off to the side. This is so summery and beautiful. And I always laugh when I arrange flowers for my house for a holiday, so for Thanksgiving or whatever. I've gotten into a rhythm of always putting some type of produce in my arrangement, so pears or pomegranates, because my friends are no longer dazzled, and family are no longer dazzled by the flowers. They're like, yeah, we've seen it before. But if you put a piece of fruit in your flowers, it's like minds are blown and they think you are the most innovative and cool hostess. So my lemon just rolled off the table. So I think you will also find that your friends and family are really tickled by the fruit being in the flowers. Your lemons will start to go bad probably after a day or two, so you can pull them out when they start to go soft. You can either put new lemons in, or you've got plenty of product in your vase to just enjoy it without the lemons. But such a pretty and fun summery design. It smells great because of the lemons, so I hope this adds a fun touch of summer to your home, and hopefully we'll see you in another workshop soon. We do have open dates both in studio and virtual. Our whole schedule is listed through the end of December, so we hope to see you in one of our classes. Enjoy the flowers, have a great day. Bye-bye.